110, and the recording has started. We got Dr. Steve. How do I pronounce your last name?
Gedeke.
Dr. Steve Gedeke. And we just met on X recently, on Twitter. And I see you're part of the team that is the new army, not too new, but new to most everyone, is the vitamin A disrespecters. And right away, when I see the doctor next to your name, I'm like, oh crap, because I think doctors hold, one of the strongest authorities in our culture, in our society. And we saw that during COVID with Fauci, but doctors hold a lot of weight. And you obviously are a professional. You took years studying, years practicing. So just let me know, man, like where you from, where you're at, like what's your story with medicine, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty and stuff.
So I'm up in Michigan, west side of Michigan, Grand Rapids. Granville is where my practice is, right outside of it.
I'm gonna be there Monday.
No way.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to come say hi. All right, keep going. My
Absolutely. Bad. Yeah, so I've been in practice about 10, 12 years. I think 12 now. And through practice, especially since I've learned about all this new stuff, this vitamin A stuff, I came across that a couple of years ago. I get the opportunity to see quite a few new patients throughout the week, and I see the patterns, and I see how a lot of the people that are my most chronic patients, they have all these other symptoms that could be very well applied to a vitamin A toxicity perspective. It seems to make sense. Like a lot of them have had their gallbladders already taken out. They've already had 3 or 4 different diagnosed autoimmune conditions. It's very, very common, and knowing what we know about the liver biopsy data, that the vitamin A toxicity is affecting around a third of the population. It seems to make sense. What's interesting is that I screwed up pretty bad in my 20s. I did a lot of the dumb things that you're not supposed to do, knowing what we know now. Did a lot of kale and spinach smoothies and juicing carrots, and even had a stint where I ate liver. That was more recent. But when I look back in hindsight, I can see that all those times where I was doing those dumb things, that's when my health suffered the greatest. The worst was in about 2017, 2018, I actually developed ankylosing spondylitis, which is a severe spine stiffening disease. Basically, you're waking up at 4 a.m, so stiff you can't even go back to sleep, and you just have to get up. And luckily, I was able to happenstance. I did carnivore for a year after that, yeah. And I started to recover. But it wasn't until getting on this new train, the vitamin A disrespecter train, over the last couple of years, I've been able to eliminate more and more and more of that stiffness, and then a lot of the other little things that I've accumulated over the years.
Yeah, so like what are some of how long have you been low vitamin A, and what are some of the other things? Because as we all are experiencing, who are doing this experiment and living our best lives through this, I start to notice like, oh, that went away. And like, I wasn't even cognizant, like I knew that was a problem, but I just accepted it and was living with it. So like, what were the other things that started, what were some of the benefits that you noticed?
So I keep a list of all the health problems that I've ever had over the last 15, 20 years. Yeah. And I check back on it every couple of months, and I find every month or two, I move something on the list. So some of the things that I've had before, really bad GI tract problems like IBS. You go 10, 12, 14 days without going to the bathroom. Not good. On the low vitamin A, it's like 3-4 times a day now. It's great. I've had a really bad issue with sacroiliitis, where it would hurt every step I took, and it would flare up like every 2 or 3 months, and it would last for sometimes 4, 5, 6 weeks, and it was awful. I couldn't go to the gym and do squats. It was a mess. Everything was unstable and hurt. Um, I had just random tendonitis and arthritis in my hands, different joints of my body at different times, uh, brittle nails. I noticed that my cuticles and my fingernails had bad morphology. They were very disorganized. That's improved. Um, One of the things that's gone away recently is that myself, I had actually become a chronic chiropractic patient. I would go in every week. And a lot of it was around my right side of my body, my right rib cage, which guess what's on the right side of the body? The liver.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
Suddenly that vanished like 3 months ago. No more right rib cage, liver pain. And I'm not going to the chiropractor every week with problems.
Yeah.
Of course, I still go for maintenance about once a month or so, but it's actually true maintenance. It's not just always, Doc, I'm hurting. Can you crack me today?
Yeah. And that's super important. And kudos to you, man, for being a doctor, being in the business of helping people, and knowing that like it's okay to, hey, you shouldn't be here every week. Like it's okay to come every month. Like I don't want you to get into the system where I'm making more money. It's more important that you're feeling better, right? And
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a lot different from other chiropractors. I probably see people less times on average than a lot of other people do. Um, but I feel like I get them better, and then some stick around and they do maintenance, some don't, but they might refer, 3 or 4 people to me over the years. So
yeah.
it's a great business, and if you are able to look on my Google profile for my business, it's like hundreds of just amazing testimonials for what we do. So it's pretty cool.
No, yeah, we'll put your links in the body of this, and we'll link to all your stuff so people in Grand Rapids in that Michigan area can come see you. And listen, on my journey, one of my first in my early 20s, I had heartburn and itchy skin, and I went to the dermatologist. They wanted to give me skin cream. They wanted to give me a prescription drug, and I said, "How long do I have to take this for?" And he's like, "Oh, forever." And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah,
I'm like, could it be something I'm eating? And he was like, no, it's we don't know why it happens type of vibe. And I was like, that's unacceptable. And if I was in my 40s or 50s, who knows? I might have just accepted it and taken that pill. But in my 20s, I was like, there's no way this is normal for me to be feeling like this. Same thing with the heartburn doctor. Take this pill. Oh, how long? You got to be on it forever. And I'm like, that makes no sense. Like, there's something I'm doing that's causing this. And the pill you're going to give me is just going to mask that. It's going to be a Band-Aid. And I'm probably going to end up needing other pills for it. So I ended up going to a local chiropractor, Dr. Gregory in Rockland County, New York, who's awesome. And this was in 2003, 2004. And he goes, cut out gluten and nitrates from your diet. And I go, what's gluten? And this is before anybody knew what gluten was,
yeah,
it was not a mainstream word. And he goes, oh, bread, bagels, pizza, pasta, nitrates are your cold cuts, and he's like, if you want to cut out, nightshades as well. So what was I eating? I was eating bacon, egg, and cheese for breakfast, Italian combo for lunch, and like pizza or pasta for dinner. That was like the 20-year-old diet, at the
yeah,
time. We didn't know any better. So, like most of us, the first question is like, well, what can I eat? What am I going to eat? So I went straight to the Caribbean food, the island food, to a place it was actually called San Juan Cafe, rice, beans, chicken, rice, beans, steak, or, rice, beans, and a fish. That was like, so I would eat some fruit in the morning, and I would go to the rice, beans, meat for lunch, rice, beans, meat for dinner. And within a week, my heartburn was gone. Within
yeah.
a
You
week.
were accidentally doing the Grant Jenner diet.
Within a week, my heartburn was gone, and then like a few weeks later, my itchy skin was gone, and I had like I was itchy all over. Um, and that's when I was like, okay, this makes total sense. I started going into the Chinese medicine route, and just all the alternative medicine. But like you said, it's a very convoluted and messy space we're in, right? With health. And when people say I eat healthy, it's like, what does that mean? That could mean,
That can mean 10 different things to 10 different people.
and you
And
probably
probably none of them are right.
hear it all the time. You ask your patient what they eat, and they say, "Oh, I eat very healthy."
Yeah, I say, what's that mean?
Right. And so what we found out now is like that eat the rainbow, that eat healthy, these colorful plants are actually carotenoids, which actually converts into retinol, retinoic acid in the body, which is actually not a vitamin at all. It's almost a form of alcohol. It is a form of alcohol. And when it goes through our detox metabolic pathways, it actually turns into aldehydes, retinol aldehydes, which are horrible for us. And which are causing most of people's pain and discomfort and disease. And people are making fun of us online and saying this guy thinks vitamin A is causing everything. And I'm like, yeah, I really do now. I think it's one of the main things.
It's
So
certainly causing a lot of things.
yeah,
And they're things that, you don't find doctors that are fixing these things. So clearly, there's no real authority on those problems. Autoimmune doctors, they're giving people biologics and anti-inflammatories, not really fixing. And there has to be a fix. There always has to be a fix. If there's not a real fix in sight, then you're dealing with somebody uh, who's not really an authority, or they're trying to swindle you.
and I know when I first started going to my chiropractor, who I love, there was a lot of supplements involved, right? And he did I guess biofeedback, right, where
Okay.
you test the supplement. Are you how's your what's your view on supplements and biofeedback, and like how has your approach changed since all this new information's come to light?
In practice, when I used to work for somebody for my first 5, 7 years in practice, we actually did a lot of supplements. And one of the big things that we were recommending for people was vitamin D3. Um, uh, Turns out that's not so good. In fact, I blame that in large part for why I got that ankylosing spondylitis. The vitamin D3, it takes the calcium, well, especially vitamin A and D in combination. Take the calcium out of your bones, puts it in your muscles and your soft tissues. It's really a no-brainer what happened there. But uh, since I've been in practice on my own, I actually do more of trying to get people off of supplements than put them on them. I don't sell supplements in my office. I haven't. Lately, I've dabbled with an approach where I can possibly get people access to things like the good minerals, the zinc, the selenium, molybdenum, um, and possibly some other small selection of things that might help. But mostly, what I do is take people off, because I find almost across the board, like really stiff guys that are, they just don't have much rotation in their torso at all. Usually they're taking something. They're taking vitamin D.
Yeah, that was one of the oh crap moments for me when I first stumbled upon Dr. Garrett Smith's page and his live stream. My journey was kind of like January 1st, I decided to stop caffeine and stop coffee. I was becoming, 2, maybe 3 cups a day. I was starting to think about it as I laid in sleep at night, like thinking about my cup of coffee in the morning. Started to be hard to wake up, all those classic symptoms where I needed it. And I said, this is BS. And I kind of started searching. How, us humans are crazy. Like once you start doing something, you start going online, searching like who else is doing it. YouTube,
Yep.
what are the benefits of stopping coffee? Why is coffee bad? I went through all those motions. And then it's like, because like I always knew that dairy was probably not the best for us, right? But I would still eat it, and I would still be like, it's okay. I can out train it. I can. And then once I saw what it was doing to the body on a molecular level, I was like, oh no, 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 no. Like, I'm never eating this again. Like, this is not a treat. This is not like a joy. But when I saw the vitamin D3, which is and I still have to learn how to pronounce this word, cholecalciferol.
Cholecalciferol, I think.
Yeah, cholecalciferol
It's
is
rat poison.
it's the main ingredient in rat poison.
Yeah.
That was just like, what is this world? Why are we doing this? And I remember, 2012, 13, I don't even remember this famous vitamin D article about the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember this?
No, I don't. I know that's about when vitamin D supplementation started to get really in vogue, though.
So they won the Stanley Cup, and the article was Blackhawks are the vitamin D team. And it was all about how their doctor that before that season saw that everyone was deficient and then got their levels up with supplementation. And that sold me, right? You tell me that these guys won the Stanley Cup and their doctor's giving them vitamin D. I was like, oh, where do I sign up? I went and got the best one with the sesame oil drops. I'm dropping it under my tongue. Then some of these health gurus are like, oh, you can take up to 10,000 IUs a day. You can take 50,000 IUs for a week straight because it's fat soluble, and then you can stop. And, I was never the most flexible. Here's the thing too, doctor. You see all these health guru fitness influencers, and it's like you need 10 to 20 minutes of warm up, and which you do need to warm up, but it's like, this is how to not be stiff anymore. Right? We get on this.
You shouldn't have to work that hard at it.
We get on this foam roller, then we rub this thing, then we do all these other things, and it's always like, hey, who has time for that? Because compliance is the science, right? And most humans, as you know, most patients are not going to do all these mundane, boring things that check this box, check that box. And I remember even Dr. Gregory would say, you don't have to stretch. You don't have to warm up that much. You should just be able to, go for a walk and then start moving and start running, because you shouldn't be stiff. And then when you find out what vitamin D3 supplements are doing, so how it kills the rat, right, is it basically hypercalcemia. It puts calcium megadosed into the blood. So what do you say to someone who's like, oh, we're not rats? It doesn't matter. We're not rats.
Well, I don't tend to go deep into that with people, just because most people that's going to already be going above their heads anyway.
Right.
I tend to just show them the decon rat poison on their website, how it's the exact same ingredient.
Yeah.
If they really want to go deeper and really study it, then I will usually refer them to Garrett Smith's posts and his pinned posts about vitamin D.
Yeah. Yeah. No, because I think it's super important in our space where, where we give it to people in a way that's very easy to digest. Like explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's the hard part is I've had a number of patients that I know they would really benefit from doing all this stuff. And maybe I'm overcomplicating it, but I understand that sometimes it can take years and of detoxification to get your body to a better point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want people to have all the information and be aware that, hey, you can detox. Sometimes you get a little worse before you get better. You need to understand all this stuff going into it. But a lot of them, if I just had them cut out a few of the major foods, they do better. For example, I had one patient who she would always come in with her neck hurting. And I found out she and her boyfriend like to eat spicy food. And I just said, stop eating spicy food. And she did, and she stopped coming in with her neck hurting every week. So yeah, they're simplifying things for the average, the normal type of population. Definitely have to keep it very simple. Um, and I don't know what that looks like yet because I don't know that anyone's done that. We have Garrett out there who's giving you 2 hours of a long form content every week on his live stream. But I don't know that anyone's made that into a simple equation yet.
No, yeah. And I think, what I say with one-on-ones is like, this is not for everybody. This is for the people who want to put the work in. This is for the people who keep searching for answers. And if you're anything like me, I get made fun of sometimes of like, what are you obsessed about this month? What are you obsessed about? And at one point in my life, it was the supplement game. And you see these huge channels on IG and on Twitter where guys are coming on the screen with their nice microphone, and they're like, Tungkat Ali, these are the benefits, and this is this short-term study, and then here's my link to buy it, right? And then and I was guilty of this. It's like, oh, let me go buy that. Where I think most people naturally would much rather not buy a supplement, right, and just be naturally good to go. And I think a common misconception now is, oh, we don't like big pharma. We don't like big medicine. Doctors are just selling us pills and surgery. Let's go the alternative holistic route and take vitamins and supplements. And
And when you're looking for help, and you get online and you start doing some research, when you're having problems, you'll do anything. You'll try anything.
Yeah.
So I think over the years, what tends to happen is people get these big supplement graveyards. They buy every supplement in the books. They try it. Of course, very few of them are ever going to make any difference for the person. That's what I did. I think I tried every supplement in the books. There's very few things out there I hear about that I have not tried yet.
Yeah.
But I was dealing with some problems, and you just try stuff until you find something that sticks.
What was so you went through the liver experiment. Tell me about that. Like, how'd you come across liver? How were you taking it? What did you notice? And like, why should people not take the detox organ known as the liver?
Well, the biggest thing that I will say about that is that me and my wife, we were eating liver on a every 2 week or so basis. And we were having a whole meal of liver where we would each eat a pound of liver. Wow. Easily. During the time period we were doing that, and shortly afterwards, my wife miscarried 3 times back to back.
Dang.
It's like, if you've never had anything like that happen to you, it's like there's a dark cloud over your life for a long time after something like that, and for it to happen 3 times, and then we stopped doing it, and I think it was just by accident. We hadn't really come across this stuff yet, but after that, stopped eating liver all the time. We had 2 babies back to back.
Yeah,
healthy.
I'm sorry to hear that, and then congratulations on the flip side. And I went through I remember maybe same time, maybe 5 years ago, I read a bodybuilding article of how liver, puts on 5 to 10 pounds of muscle. And like, here's this old school bodybuilder and his secret was liver. So what did I do? I went and this was before Liver King. This was before Saladino. This was before all these guys. And it was like not even a capsule. It was like a tablet, like a hard tablet. And I used to crunch them up and like put them on my rice and my eggs. And I thought, it was making me stronger, but I would never finish those bottles for some reason. They would be part of that supplement graveyard. And I think intuitively, I always had in the back of my mind, this tastes disgusting if I were to eat it plain, right? And
Right.
If something tastes disgusting to me eating it plain, why am I masking it into a tablet to force it into me? Like, that never sat well with me. And then you look at children who have this fresh, clean system, and they have this amazing supercomputer known as the tongue and taste buds. And most children would spit out liver if you just gave it to them plain. But we add butter, we add onions, we add it into the ground beef, And then the other thing that would happen was when I first got my dog, I would get liver to cook for myself, and I'd be like, oh, dog's raw food diet, and I would put the liver on the floor, and my dog wouldn't eat it, and he would look at me like, nope, and I was like, huh, that's really concerning, because if I give him ground beef, he devours it. If I give him boiled chicken, devours it. If I give him steak, he can't get enough of it. But here I am giving him this superfood, and he's like, no way, man. And then I'm like, well, maybe I should mix it into his food for him. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because now I'm like secretly poisoning him. And then we find out that vitamin A is not a vitamin. It's actually an alcohol. And the liver is very good at storing vitamin A and copper to protect us. As Dr. Garrett Smith says, our bodies are very smart, and they'll pick the slow death over the fast death.
Yeah, and with these liver pills, I can't imagine what their profit margins are, because you take this piece of animal tissue that the butchers can't sell to anybody.
Yep.
So they probably unload it all for like pennies on the dollar to some company that's going to encapsulate it and sell it to you for the equivalent of like hundreds of dollars a pound.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very lucrative thing, I could see. And I think that's why we have so much bad information and misinformation trying to push these pills. They're big money makers.
No, you're spot on. I looked into it. You can get desiccated liver powder in bulk for literally like pennies on the dollar. And then you have guys like the Liver King who are selling them for $50, $60, $80 a bottle.
Yeah.
And then you find out he's actually on steroids, which is neither here nor there. If you want to take steroids, that's your prerogative and it's fine. To me, the problem comes when you're on steroids and then you're promoting something like a detox organ to the masses, right? And now you see Liver King, he's almost gone blind. His arm is in a sling, and it looks like he's deteriorating. And if
he looks awful, yeah. And he's promoted. I mean, the way he's promoted, he's saying that his liver supplements are and eating the liver, that's his performance enhancer, not the steroids.
And that's why I started one-on-ones. That's why I started going hard on Twitter and IG and soon to be YouTube, because people say, oh, well, what credential do you have? Or you're not a doctor. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of, first of all, results are king. The scoreboard is what matters. Are you getting people better? And on top of that, there is an abundance of misinformation influencers out there just shilling anything and everything. And people are honestly playing guessing games with their health to the point where my friend the other day sent me an email from the Heart and Soil, I guess it's the Saladino company, where they're literally telling women that it's okay to take liver while they're pregnant. And back to you said with the miscarriage, I'm a big testimonies guy, social proof guy. If you look through Dr. Garrett Smith's Love Your Liver program, and if you talk to some of the clients I've had, once you go on low vitamin A, watch out, because you're going to be fertile. You're going to be a lot more fertile, and you might accidentally get pregnant. Whereas with what you saw when you guys were doing the vitamin A, it was the opposite. Yeah.
And long term, we're loaded up with this stuff because of, us eating liver, even for that short period of time, I feel terrible about it, because I feel like I dragged my wife on that train, and it made her toxic, and she's still dealing with that. In fact, the more toxic you are, it's pretty well known in the community now, in Garrett's program and the people online, pregnancies are much easier over time when you cut vitamin A out, but
Mhm.
it's not always immediate. It's 2 years later, 3 years, 4 years into it that things get easier and easier. But my wife had a terrible, terrible time with our second baby. She was sick as can be, cholestatic liver,
Right.
bile backing up into the blood. And I'm sure some of that is because we ate all that liver over that time period.
No, yeah, and the toxic bile theory and the liver back into the blood. And looking back into my early 20s, one of my first symptoms, the itchy skin and the heartburn is actually the bile coming in reverse,
Yes.
right? And when you see vitamin A converts into retinoic acid, and you say, oh, the word acid, and then you see that vitamin A is the ingredient that is the chemical peel for the cosmetic industry. And then you see that, oh, what is a chemical peel, also known as the yellow peel, vitamin A peel? The chemical peel is actually peeling off, destroying a layer of your skin.
Hmm.
So you get this new skin and you look good. But when you go to the fourth, fifth, sixth round of this, you start to see horror stories. You
Yeah.
start to see deep wounds. You start to see permanent damage. So if that's what it's doing on the outside, what is it doing on the inside of our body? Right?
Right. Right. And what's interesting is when you're really toxic and then you start to detox, you'll feel in it'll come in waves. Yeah, it's not always. It's usually things feel better, but
Yeah.
every once in a while you'll get a little wave of detox where your body's moving around a bunch of this stuff. And the feeling of retinoic acid moving through your lymphatic system is it's a very itchy feeling. It's not good.
How long have you been low vitamin A?
2 years, and I just had a blood test
Uh-huh.
to see where I was at. And I think a year ago my level was 47, and I'm at 53 this year. So
Yeah.
I'm still just astronomically high.
Isn't that
But
incredible?
it seems like people are finding around 4 years. That's when the level starts to actually drop.
Yeah. Which is totally flips the combo on its head where you're going to die from vitamin A deficiency.
It'd
You're
be impossible.
not only are you not dying, uh, a year later, your level got higher. So explain that. That's because it's starting to spill out. It's starting the liver. You're starting to be. Your body's like, okay, you're not doing this anymore. Now it's time to get rid of it rather than store it. Right?
I think over time your detox pathways they get more healthy, and the less toxic you become, the faster you detox.
Right.
It's like a catch-22 situation. So as you get less toxic, you're moving faster, you're producing more bile, and that bile can be going places, and some of it's going to be in your blood, and you're going to see that.
No. Yeah. And so when people, what are is there? Are you doing anything to like expedite the process or help your detox pathways? Are you also doing no sulfur?
No, I avoid like all the sulfur foods, the cruciferous vegetables, and stuff like that too. Basically, all the stuff that Garrett talks about on his program, I
Hmm.
follow to the letter to some extent.
Yeah.
Where I don't follow him to the letter is I'm always the guy who is trying to do it the fastest to be the most aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if I get a sense that something will speed things up, then I jump on it. And I've been all aboard the recent niacin experiment,
Hmm.
which has been very interesting. I do think it's speeding things up.
The nicotinic acid. So how are you? Obviously, guys, not medical advice. I'm with you. I go back and forth from the baby yourself, take it slow to the like, no, I can go through some pain. I'm ready to go through some pain. So how are you approaching the nicotinic acid and like what is your dosages? How often do you do it? What's your experience? Um, my cousin Fred actually has been telling me about niacin probably for the past 2 or 3 years. He actually wanted to start selling it, because he was able to, I believe, get off his cholesterol meds, or he was able to get off some niacin's the one that's helping people with their cholesterol, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I started it about 3 months ago, and I got a cholesterol test last month, and
Uh-huh.
my cholesterol is like total 125. LDL was like 75. And it'd be interesting to do that again without taking the niacin for a week and just see if it goes back to something more normal.
Mm-hmm.
But 7 years ago, when I had it checked, I was 200 total cholesterol. So it definitely came down. My triglycerides were just ridiculously low. It was like 19 or something.
Yeah.
But they say that not they say, but you can find that it actually helps to mobilize fat soluble toxins. And that's been my experience. I feel like it's mobilized fat soluble toxins from weird places in my body. Some of them being like areas where they're not normally areas that you would think of fat areas. But I'm a very underweight type. I can never put on much weight anywhere around my abdomen. So where does my body have to go if it wants to store some fat soluble toxins? Well, one place might be the fat pads of my hand and my feet. Around the joints, there's a little bit of fat. Behind your eye, you have a little bit of fat. So it definitely moves around those things, and you can feel that as they're moving around. It feels like that retinoic acid feeling.
Yeah. No. What dose are you taking?
I've gone up and down. I've settled on about a gram a day. Somewhere between 500 and 1500 roughly. I don't think there's reason to take more than that. Like you can go up to. I tried 15 grams in a day one time. I don't think that's really necessary.
Yeah. No. And when you did the 15 grams, did you get the flush?
It doesn't actually work so linear like that. If you're taking it every day, you start to just not even flush that much. Although, interestingly, I did try. I have an experiment with niacin like 4 or 5 years back before I was doing this, and I would take about 500 a day, and I would flush hard every day.
Yeah.
And now my flush is very minimal. I guess probably because a lot of the carotenoids have already moved out of my skin.
I've experienced the same thing, and I'll almost take a few days off just because I actually like the flush.
Yeah.
It's like I want to feel like it's working. And I don't know, I still have to find out, and there's theories on this, like, is it that I'm becoming more tolerant to it, or is it that there's nothing to flush out anymore? And I think it's maybe a combination of both.
Yeah, I think so too.
And what's interesting to me is kind of how we always knew niacin, and there's different forms of it. And the one we like is the nicotinic acid, the one that gives you the flush. Matter of fact, rewind real quick. The first time I ever did a niacin flush, I was probably in my 20s, before one of my baseball games. And, I was same thing online, going down a rabbit hole, read about the flush. I think it was on some it might have been on some High Times forum of this is how you detox drugs from your system or something. So I was like, oh, then well that'll work for everything else too. Let me detox. So I took it and I showed up to my baseball game bright red as a tomato, and I was a little bit itchy, and people were like, what is wrong with you? And my first at bat, I hit a screaming line drive up the middle for a single. And I was like, oh, I like niacin. It became my lucky charm. But what I found too with niacin, it's almost like a nootropic too. It kind of, that tingle in the brain, I'm kind of getting activated where I'm a little bit more sharp. Have you felt that?
That's interesting. I don't think I have noticed that. I can say that in my time doing the detox, I definitely get a lot less, brain fog, as people call it. A little bit more focused in my thoughts, I think. But
No,
I haven't noticed anything with niacin specifically.
my cognitive function keeps getting better. As we've discussed, a lot of people say it takes 3 years for this to fully get out of your system. It can be a long, bumpy road. Some people have worse detox symptoms than others. My first, and it's weird, it didn't start right away. About, I'd say, 3 weeks into low vitamin A, I started dumping bad in the form of phlegm, green and yellow, green and yellow snot and phlegm every morning. And the old me would have been like, "Oh, I'm sick. Let me take medicine." You
Yeah,
know,
let me load up on some vitamin C or
let me
something
take
like that.
let me take vitamin C. Let me take garlic. Now I know that garlic actually just shuts down your ALDH detox pathway, and that's the reason you think you're better. Your body's basically storing it away for a rainy day, making it worse. I embraced it. I said, "This is awesome. Let me get rid of this." Now I'm going for runs in the morning, just hocking up the biggest loogies. And Dr. Smith says this a lot. Like, he gets patients who are like, "I never get sick," and he's like, "That's a bad thing." That was me,
It
and
can be a bad thing. Yeah.
yeah, it can be a bad thing. And being an undertype, a skinny type, like you mentioned before, can be a bad thing because you're not storing it in that fat. You know,
Right. You don't have much of a buffer against the toxicity, so it hits you harder. And with my list of problems that I've had in the past, it makes sense.
yeah. And what was the thing you said on your sacroiliitis?
Sacroiliitis. So the sacroiliac
Sacroiliitis.
joint, that's in your lower back. It's on one on each side.
Right.
It's a big, very important weight bearing joint. So if that is inflamed and unstable, that can create a problem.
So what are you eating? What's your diet look like? What's your eating on a day-to-day basis look like?
It's really expanded over time because there's actually so many great foods you can eat with this. And my wife has come up with a lot of great recipes. But we do a lot of ground beef. We do a lot of chicken. We do sourdough bread. I'm a big fan of spelt bread, especially. It's one of my favorites. Um, Apples, bananas. We do some potatoes here and there, even though it's a nightshade. We do it once a week or so.
Hmm.
Uh, we make stews and soups with celery and parsnips, and there's just so many great things you can eat.
Yeah, I think I go a little extreme, and at first I was doing the Grant Jinru rice bean. What another synchronicity moment, and what I loved is I was already a huge fan of bison. I was already a big bison guy, eating a lot of it because I knew it was high in zinc, and historically I knew it was the chosen food of the Native Americans. I know you are what you eat, and I'd rather eat like a wild big bison that's strong and fast and is a killer than like a grazing cow that's kind of more fat and lazy. And I don't want to make fun of cows too much because I still love steak, but I started eating that bison rice and beans religiously strict because of what I saw his results. But then, what I tell people that's not sustainable for a lot of people, right? And
Well, yeah, and I think really obsessive people can do like the single food a day. I think men can do it a little bit better.
mhm,
My wife needs variety.
I
We
hear,
fought over food every night for about a year until she got on board with this.
yeah. Well, if you just give it to people straight, and then you kind of show them how people are getting better, and then you show them what it's doing to them on a molecular level, and then they try it and feel the difference. It's impossible to deny. It's just it's impossible to deny. um and you see a guy like Grant Jinro, um who wrote the book Poison for Profits, who, when I first read that book and how I really got into this community more, he's going 9 years, uh
Nine
bison
years.
9 years, bison, rice, beans. He was stage 3 kidney disease, I believe.
Stage 3 or 4, I believe. Yeah,
Because stage 5 is like death.
pretty much. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
so
that's dialysis, if I remember.
he was one step away from dialysis. So stage
Okay.
4, body covered in eczema, goes on a online forum, late at night one night and finds this thing called eczema trigger foods. And it's tomatoes, spinach, dairy, eggs. And he's like, well, that's weird. And then puts it in a spreadsheet in a database. What do these foods have in common? What's their high point? Oh, they're all high in vitamin A. Then he has the genius simple logic to just be like, well, let me just try to eliminate vitamin A from my diet. And he's like, well, what is that? Okay, well, I can eat rice, beans, bison, and I think he picked bison because of the zinc too. He was smart enough to know that zinc is good for the skin, and he was like deathly afraid of supplements and all this other BS. He went the exact opposite way of big pharma and big supplement. And within 30 days, he had been looking at his skin under a microscope, and he was seeing the skin eat itself from the inside out, just deteriorating and like evaporating.
Yeah.
And then, day 20 something, day 22, he's like, huh, my skin's not doing that anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I've had some eczema too, and when you look at what eczema looks like, you look close at it. It it looks and it feels like a chemical peel from the inside out that's seeping from the deeper layers to the surface of your skin.
That's
And
it.
maybe your body's trying to just detoxify the retinoic acid through the skin, just straight out. Maybe that's why it happens.
Yeah. No, it's totally the skin is one of our largest detox organs, and your epidermis is showing. That was the joke. Everyone would, what's epidermis? But people have this misnotion where it's like, oh, okay, these eruptions are toxic. Let me wash it off with soap, right? Let me use a special face cleanser that's proven to get away acne. So you're admitting that something toxic is coming to your skin, and you're admitting you have to clean it. But what about if you admitted like, oh, what I'm eating? And then people can get super defensive. For the most part, I think a lot of people are happy when you tell them, oh, you don't have to eat carrots anymore. You don't have to eat sweet potatoes anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to eat a glass of milk for your calcium. And if you look at the history of dairy in this country, that's another huge psyop where the powers that be, basically World War One, we distributed a shit ton of dairy and cheese to give to the soldiers as easy food, and then there was stockpiled in a cave in Kansas, and then the war ended, and they said, well, what are we going to do with this tons of cheese? And one of the officials was like, oh, we can just throw it in the ocean, throw it away. And then a few other guys were like, no, like let's get some research behind this. Let's see how it's healthy for everyone. Let's put it into the schools. Let's put it into the jails. Let's put it into the subsidized programs. Let's help the dairy farm. Because what happened when this demand for the war came, dairy farmers started printing money. And then when the war stopped, the farmers were like, what now? How are we going to make this money?
Yeah.
And this is the double-edged sword of capitalism, where I make this joke. It's like, eat like a communist, do business like a capitalist. But like, we have to start doing conscious capitalism, where it's like, what cost are we paying by making an extra billion dollars on these industries if our people are sick? If our people are low energy, if our people are depressed, that's really affecting our economy and our bottom line,
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure why things have gotten to where they are. I always ascribe to like libertarianism, the Adam Smith's invisible hand and stuff, and it seems like, gosh, some of these things that are happening don't seem like they should be happening. But it's probably because we're not applying the law properly and making people be held accountable.
Yeah, and we have industries running our health department. You know,
Yeah, it's totally captured. Yeah. And it's hard to find a solution for that. And it's like everything's captured. Every government agency, every every industry, it's like they're all sort of in the same camp working to screw you over.
yeah, and people always bring up, oh, it's a conspiracy, and they want to kill us. I don't think it always is a conspiracy. I think a lot of it is ignorance and misinfo. I think if you look at the cornerstone research, a lot of it done in the early 1900s, the 1920s, you get that big study that wins a Nobel Peace Prize and gets the patents. It's very hard to come back from that. And we've become a society and a generation where we skip the terms and conditions and we just go to the bottom and accept, right? We're not reading any of the fine print. And when you read the fine print in some of these cornerstone research, like one of the main vitamin A studies, they were giving the rats pork fat and corn.
Yeah.
So pork fat is a high source of retinoic acid, which is vitamin A, or retinol esters, right? The true animal form is retinol esters, which turn into retinaldehydes. So, like, isn't aldehyde good for us?
Absolutely not. And it's interesting with the language in these studies. You mentioned like the bottom line versus all the details in the middle. When you read through these papers, there's so much politicized language regarding this compound they call a vitamin, that's actually an alcohol. Um, it's so widespread that there must be something happening where papers will not publish your study unless you include language like that. And
Yeah.
then even if you go to ask Chat GPT to try to figure some of this stuff out, Chat GPT is going to spit back that politicized language that the authors put in right back at you, regardless of what their data showed.
Chat GBT makes me bullish on mankind because the AI is flawed, severely designed by humans with an extreme bias. And it's almost a good thing, I think. I think it's a good thing that AI is so vanilla and stupid. And, I think I started asking ChatGPT or Google Bard some questions about vitamin A. And a lot of the answer I got was like, I'm a language model. I can't answer that. which is like, oh, okay, this is poison. And like, there's something going on here. I think it's the same thing too with, the supplement industry is completely unregulated. It's the wild, wild west. We're basically using the trust system with a third party. There's a bunch of fillers. You're finding metals in supplements. You're finding, if you go on Amazon and look at some of these liver supplements and what I used to do is I used to always just go to the 5-star review. I didn't want to see the 1-star review. I would buy that supplement and I would read all the good ones. And
Yep.
like that was part of the placebo. Now I've been going into the 1-star reviews. These liver supplements, you have hospitalizations.
They're bad. They're really bad.
They're and what people say is, oh, I took that and I was fine. And it's like, yeah, because your liver's still storing it.
Yep.
And this is why this conversation is so dangerous, because I can't tell you to take one thing, not knowing your saturation of your liver, and tell another guy to take it when really there's no reason to ever take it. There's no reason to ever take liver.
Yeah, and that makes the whole thing very complicated to sort through, because some people can tolerate this stuff better.
Yep.
Some people have plenty of room left in their liver and their fat cells to store this stuff, and that can hold up for years.
Yep.
And then it's when it breaks, it might not break for some people until their 50s. even though lots of people are breaking in their teens or 20s even. And it also depends on what your mother's health was like. If your mother was really toxic, you probably inherited a lot of her toxic burden, and you started off life with a liver storage that's already this high. So there's so much individual variation, both genetically and as far as what you come into this world and what your childhood delivered to you. That not everybody's going to respond the same way to the same supplements. Some people won't experience the toxic effects for a long time. Um, it's just it makes it very difficult to understand this based off of just what people say, and their anecdotes and things like that.
No, for sure. And, I think even if you aren't expressing it on the outside, I think it's still affecting people. And what I've had, like with some of our community members and some of my former, and current clients, it's like some guys and gals see this, understand the science and the chemistry, and even though they're not autoimmune, even though they're not eczema, psoriasis, joint pain, they still jump on board, and then they report back like, "Oh, I feel stronger. Oh, I have more energy. Oh, I'm more happy."
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a big one. I'm having more dreams. Have you noticed you're dreaming?
Intermittently.
Yeah,
That comes in waves. I
yeah.
think depending on what I'm detoxing that week.
No, it's coming in. So it was very strong in the beginning, and now it's coming in waves for me now again. And if you read Grant Jinro's blog and his material, he's saying now, he's 9 years in. I think year 3 and onward, he's like, I dream all night long. And if you're anything like me, and I know a lot of our listeners and followers and community members, what's one of the main esoteric alternative health talking points is this your pineal gland getting calcified.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when you see what vitamin A is doing to calcify you, then you're like, oh, and then this is what you do to uncalcify your pineal gland. I remember one of the things that we were told to decalcify our pineal gland was cod liver oil.
Oh gosh, I'm sure people have made claims like that. But of
Yep.
course, you want to like stay away from the fluoridated water, and don't drink the tap water. Drink your own water, stuff like that. You hear that, but I had never really thought about that. Even though I think I've gone down that rabbit trail before, the pineal gland, decalcifying it. Uh, but vitamin A restrictions a great way to decalcify your pineal gland.
I think it really is. I think it really is. And that is like the house of your spirituality. And what I've noticed too is I'm way more present. I'm way more happy. I was always a very easygoing, peaceful person, especially in public. But in private, I could get angry. I could get short. And who do we get short with the most? Like the people closest to us,
Yeah,
right? Our the ones we're comfortable with, our family members. And I start to sit there and reflect at night of like how many relationships are ruined, how many divorce, like how much is this having a part in our divorce rate of our country, where over 50% of people are getting divorced. How many of these people just have toxic livers? And if you go back to Chinese medicine, the liver is the house of emotions.
yeah. That it would be interesting to see when they started fortifying all the dairy and when the divorce rate started to pick up.
1970s.
Yeah,
1970s. And a lot of things, we just need a lot of charts that are like, this is when dairy became fortified with vitamin A, and then this is everything else. And you know um, some of the data I've seen is 1 out of 3 people have vitamin A toxicity. In the 1960s, there was a study, I think in Ghana, where they were doing liver biopsies, and like 50% of the population had, and the best way to see that you have a vitamin A toxicity in your liver is a biopsy. but that's super dangerous and not, not reality. Like, you should not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, it's this stuff is hard to prove. A lot of people are saying, not a lot of people, but the reply guys and the haters, oh, that's anecdotal evidence. It's just anecdotal. And it's like, well, we see a guy who reverses his cirrhosis of the liver, unheard of. You see a
Yep.
guy who reverses stage 4 kidney disease, unheard of. You see people covered in eczema healed. Doesn't happen often. It's like, I don't care what that is. It's working.
And there are certain things that an anecdote can be so powerful just from one example. If you have one guy out there with a vitamin A blood vitamin A level that's near zero, and he's not died of vitamin A deficiency, then that proves to you that vitamin A deficiency probably doesn't exist.
Yeah. And then you start to look at things like World War II with the death camps in Japan. Specifically, these guys were fed one bowl of rice a day. And then they were forced slave labor in the brutal sun every day. And then 3.5 years later, they get liberated, and the doctors examine them, and their eyesight's actually like impeccable. It's actually improved in some ways.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, what is that? Not a study? Thousands of men, no vitamin A, and that's another thing we need to clarify too. Vitamin A is in everything. Retinoids are in everything, right? Because carotenoids come from plants. Animals eat plants. We eat animals. You can't avoid vitamin A completely. No one here is saying go on a no vitamin A diet. You would die doing that. That would be the bowl of rice. What we're saying is when you lower it, you give your body a chance to detox. You open up these detox pathways. You're no longer poisoning yourself with this alcohol, which is retinol, and you start to see vast improvements. That's what we're saying.
Yep.
What do you think about the conversation? And I really want to lean into this more, and I have a bunch of studies that I still have to read, but the conversation, and we could kind of probably finish up on this note unless you want to talk about anything else: testosterone, hormones, and vitamin A.
Well, that's interesting. I sit a little bit low. I think I was tested in the 400s a month or two ago when I did my test. I'm still waiting for that like 2.5, 3 year bump to come in that Garrett Smith talks about. A couple other members of the his community I've talked with, they had a similar thing where like all of a sudden 3 years in, they shot up to 900. So jury's still out for that on that for me, but I think in about a year I'll do another test and we'll see where that is.
I appreciate your honesty there and transparency, and that's so important to be transparent with people because, especially you young guys who got really damaged by Accutane, it's like, guys, don't give up. You got acutely poisoned, and it's going to take 2, 3, maybe 3 years to fully get that out, where your body can start working again the way it's supposed to. So do you do anything either supplement wise or lifestyle wise to kind of help that? Are you thinking like, what are some other things I can do to raise my testosterone? How do you look at that combo?
Not really. I think it's just a matter of time before that comes along. But of course, you have to lift weights. What are you doing if you don't lift weights? Lift weights, sleep well, all the good stuff. Live a lifestyle that's low stress. That's going to all help your testosterone as well.
Yeah. What about sunlight or the sun lamp or any of that?
Sunlight, of course. Yeah. I actually want to get being up in Michigan, like it stinks all winter not being able to get in the sun. I've been dying to get in the sun and just waiting for a nice sunny day where it's warm. And I'll resume my vitamin D, my real vitamin D, my sunlight intake.
Yeah.
But I've done like red light therapy and stuff like that. but I'd like to get also a UV light for the house.
Yeah, man, I know Spear Tea has some, and we have some on the website and in our community. And so, any closing thoughts, any closing questions, any closing comments, or things you want to tell people?
Um, I just think if you're having a health problem, there's always a solution. There's always a cause. You just have to figure it out. And with this line of thinking, we've gotten into a place where we found a thing where it seems to affect a whole lot of health conditions. So it's worth a try for just about anybody to dig in, learn about it, learn why some of these foods are poisonous, see what happens to people that eat them all the time, and try to start getting your toxic burden lower instead of piling on, and see what happens to your health in 2, 3, 4 years.
Very well said, brother. And where can people find you? What's your name? What's your place of business and your website and all that good stuff?
Oh, well, I'm up in Granville, Michigan, just outside of Grand Rapids. Of course, I don't do any remote business or phone consultations or anything like that. All my business is done by hand here in the office. But my website is accelchiropractic.com. That's ACCEL. And I have a little bit of YouTube videos up on a page too, that people can find me.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you having this convo with me. I think it's super important. I want to get as many people as I can to kind of give their story, give their testimony, because as you know, this is a tough topic, a tough convo, and for a lot of people, it's probably scary to take that leap of faith. For a lot of people, they just listen to their doctors, and if you go to your doctor, most of you, and you say, "Hey, I'm going to go on a low vitamin A diet," the doctor's probably going to tell you not to do that. You
Yeah.
know, that would be my guess. And that also reminds me, I heard a guy yesterday. He he fixed a bunch of problems he was having, and his doctor said, "Wow, this is amazing." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm on a low vitamin A diet." And the doctor was like, "All right, that's cool. Keep doing that." And like didn't ask another question about it.
Yeah. He says, "Oh, that's interesting." Thinking he's talking to a crazy person, but yeah, I mean, it's the year 2024. I think a lot of people are realizing like the doctors don't have all the solutions. If you're still only listening to what your doctor says, what's the phrase? Not gonna make it.
Oh yeah, you're seeing people like Dana White now come on the screen, millions of followers, massively successful. What I think is one of the biggest, coolest brands in the world with the UFC, and he's telling the world like, "Hey, my doctor failed me," and it wasn't until I got with this consultant, health coach, quack, uncertified, no doctor degree guy that now I'm feeling better than I was feeling in my 20s and 30s.
Yeah, I mean, any Joe Schmo off the street can learn all about toxic bile theory,
Yeah.
and you can right away be more effective than most of what's going on out there in medicine.
That was one of the one driving things that really grinded my gears and got me pissed during this whole COVID thing when they were like, don't do research. Like, you don't need to read. Like, just trust us. It's
Just
like,
trust us.
it's like, that's the opposite of what I'm going to do. Like, now because of PubMed and all these institutes and all this public library research, like, you can go and read everything the doctor reads. And
Yeah,
you can draw your own conclusions where the double-edged sword of the place we live in is like we have too much information, but it like technology and the internet is like fire. You can use it to cook a nice meal for your family, or you can use it to burn your house down. And
right.
it's the powers in our hands as people, to experiment and do less harm in an approach where you start to find answers and you start to find something that works for you, and it's just better for humanity, man. you know
Absolutely.
cool, man. So I think we'll end it there. We got an hour and 10 minutes in. One of Ones, episode 1. And Dr. Steve, from Acel Chiropractic. And click subscribe, click like, leave a comment. Even if you want to tell me how wrong we are, if you want to tell me why vitamin A is so good for you, leave a comment, like, follow, subscribe, and stay tuned. Next week, we'll have another episode coming up. Peace, y'all. All right.
All right. We're all done?
All done, brother.
Okay.